guys tell me when you're ready, alright?
Go ahead,
Alright, colleagues, good afternoon. It's been quite a while since I last provided an update, but I think it's crucial today for me to just quickly provide an update as to where we're at in the recount process and to quickly provide you or to address some of the key issues that we currently have before us. As you may be aware that we started out this recount with a gazetted order on the 4th of May for the commencement of the exercise on the 6th of May 2020, with the intent that the exercise would be concluded within a 25 days duration. Unfortunately, we could not meet that deadline, and so with some deliberations at the level of the commission, all things being equal, there was a need to amend that order by way of an addendum to cater for an extension of this exercise. So that addendum was gazetted on Friday, the 29th of May, which was just one day prior to the expiration of that 25 days period. And the commission now would have provided a timeline as to on or before the 13th of June 2020. Now, as at the 31st May, we would have completed just about 1,739 boxes. I have the total for today just for Region 9, which just had 2 boxes to be completed. So that now would have put us at a total of 1,741 boxes completed out of that 2,339, which means that we have roughly about 598 boxes to be completed. That excludes the total that we would generate for today. So looking at the rate we've been moving over the past few days, it means that it's likely that we will be completed within the new duration that we have. Now, just to give you a quick idea, we would have completed 7 of the 10 regions. That is regions 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, 8, and 9. Of those 7 that have been completed, 5 would have been certified. That is regions 1, 2, 3, 5, and 7. Region 8 is expected to be certified today, and Region 9 possibly in another 2 days or so. So of that 598 boxes still to be counted, for Region 4 we have 436 boxes remaining. Region 6, 88 boxes. Region 10, 74 boxes. So the regions that we have been counted now is just 4, 6, and 10. And for those regions, we have 6 of the 12 workstations allocated to Region 4, 3 for Region 6, and the other 3 at Region 10. Now the figures I would have provided to you is as of yesterday, with the exception of Region 9, which was completed this morning, which included those 2 boxes that were counted for Region 9 this morning. So in terms of our figures, that's where we're at, and we hope that we continue with pace. You would have realized as of yesterday, we managed to reach that 100 target, which was the highest number of boxes counted within any specific day. I know there has been a question in the public domain as it relates to unstamped ballots. And while this remains a discussion at the level of the Commission, what I can provide you at this point is particularly for the 5 regions that would have been tabulated, the total in terms of the rejected ballots. As you know, unstamped ballots falls within that category of rejected ballots. And so while I will not be able to provide you at this point as to specifically unstamped ballots, because what the SORs generated provides for is a category for rejected ballots. And just to provide you with some details as to what constitutes a rejected ballot, it's for want of official mark, which is the stamp, unmarked or void for uncertainty, void of uncertainty, marked for more than one party list of candidates, or marked so that the elector can be identified. So anything within those categories is what constitutes a rejected ballot. Now for general election in Region 1, what we had from this is the tabulated and certified regions I'll provide for. We had a total of 380 rejected ballots. For the regional election, 328. Region 2. For general election, 251. For the regional election, 380. Region 3, for the general election, 485, and for the regional election, 618. For Region 5, 256 for general, and 374 for regional. Region 7, 164 for general, and for regional, 227. That brings us to a total for general rejected ballots for those 5 regions, 1,536, and for regional elections, 1,927 for the regional elections. So I wanted to provide that clarity. I know the interest is particularly as it relates to the intermix stations. However, this continues to be a discussion at the level of the Commission, and at the appropriate time, we will provide further details on those matters. So I will just take a pause there to entertain whatever questions you may have, and so I'll be able to provide an update as it relates to your specific request.
Yolanda, Robbery Prime News. Could you say what exactly the Commission is discussing as it relates to the unstamped ballots? And just for clarity, for the rejected ballots, it could be that a ballot is partially rejected because it doesn't have a stamp, or the elector committed some of these other thing, and it could be that an entire ballot, both regional and general, is rejected.
All right. If you look at the total I've provided there, you would have seen a variation.
Exactly.
It means that for a ballot, at the time of counting, ballots are also detached for general and for regional. I did, in one of my previous briefs, indicated that we would have had some cases where half of the ballot was stamped and another half was not stamped. And so this is very well likely to be some of the cases we have here if you look in terms of the variations in these numbers. So, but rejected ballots, as I say, fall into these categories that I provided as to want of official mark, which is the stamp, that's one category. Unmarked or void of uncertainty, marked for more than one party list of candidates, or marked so that the elector can be identified. So any of these things here, once during the count, any of these were noticeable, it means that they would have been counted and classified and counted for as a rejected ballot.
What exactly is the Commission discussing on this particular issue?
At this point, I can't say where they're at in terms of their discussion. I know particularly the numbers was of some concerns. Looking at their analogy of a few of the boxes, it was believed that where there were intermix of discipline services ballots, as you know, discipline services ballots are not stamped when they vote 10 days prior to election day. It's to be stamped at the time of intermixing at the respective polling stations where they've been gazetted to be intermixed. And so because of some of the numbers that were emanating from some of those boxes, it was believed that some of those could have been a case where discipline services ballots were not stamped. So this continues to be a discussion at the level of the Commission. I'm not sure exactly the direction in terms of their discussion, but I'm sure that when a decision is arrived at, that we will formally communicate that.
So this is what I'm trying to get, whether or not they're discussing if the ballots can be counted or this.
Well, we would have gone past the stage of the counting because if you look, these regions have already been tabulated and certified. But I know because it's an issue of interest to political parties in particular, that it is something that the Commission will pronounce on definitively at some point in time on this issue.
Yolanda, from Kitron News. Can you say how many names were on the first list sent to immigration by the GECOM chair?
You said the first list?
Yes, the first one.
I am aware of one list. I am not aware of a second and third list. You were aware that the APNU AFC met with the Commission sometime and expressed some concerns as it relates to what they termed as irregularities or anomalies during the recount exercise. During that time, during that meeting, it was requested of them that they should provide evidence of their allegations to the Commission. In responding to that request, they would have provided a letter with an attachment of a total of 207 names. That was provided to the Commission, I think sometime around the 20th of May. And in so doing, the chair would have written to the Commissioner of Police with that attachment on the 22nd of May. And a response, I think, was received on the 27th of May. The response from the Commission, the Commissioner would have indicated that 172 out of that 207 did not arrive or return to Guyana on or before the 2nd of March.
Can you say whether GECOM has a record of ballots being issued to these persons or their serial numbers associated with them?
I will not be able to provide that detail.
Was that
But
established
this
before the request was made?
Sorry?
Could you say whether the commission sought to establish that before the request was made?
I will not be able to indicate that.
So
Can
as you
you say
receive the
whether
list,
this
you're
was
just
a-
sending it to immigration just like that?
Sorry?
As the commission receives the list, you just send it to immigration?
That's correct.
So it's not a case of checking against your records to first verify whether ballots had been issued to this?
What happened if you understand clearly the recount process? When a box has been counted, the contents of that box is sealed back in that box, including the list. SOR is generated after the count, but the box with the contents of that box as received from the container is sealed back and placed back into that container.
You say that to say that the list is inaccessible?
Well, once a SOR and the box has been counted, once a SOR has been generated, that box is
And
counted.
you're saying that the commission couldn't go back to that box?
The commission has not made a decision on the way forward on this matter. And I wouldn't want to say it's inaccessible. It is right behind in a container.
No, what I'm trying to get is,
It is right behind the Artichon Conference Center in a container.
so why
what is the
not
purpose?
ask?
What I am saying, this issue remains a discussion at the level of the commission. The commission is meeting again today at 1:30. When the commission has a position on how they move forward on this particular matter, you will so be advised.
So as it is right
What I
now,
said to you is that when a box has been counted, an SOR is generated, the box is sealed with the contents that is in that box.
Was there a
just for-
purpose for sending for
The list,
clarification?
what was
The
the
list,
reason?
what was the purpose of sending?
Well, I am not
And on
sure
which authority
what
was
is
that?
the purpose. The chair has written to the commissioner. I am not sure as to the reason behind the chair's request. I'm sure that at some point the chair would be able to provide that detail.
So it wasn't a commission
was it a
decision.
commission decision?
I know the commissioners were aware of the intent, but specifically as it relates to a decision of the commission, I will not be able to say.
Can you say if it was discussed at the meeting?
Can we have one question at a time, please? Thank you.
From Kaiser News. Do you think the GECOM chair is concerned about this investigation potentially usurping the authority of your court pursuant to Article 163 of the Constitution?
I will not want to speak for the chair, or as a matter of fact, decisions that or discussions that continue to engage the commission. I think it would be appropriate. This is an issue that the commission is still discussing, and when the commission of itself makes a decision or a determination as to how they proceed on this issue, it will be communicated publicly. So I will not want to infer as to what the chair or the commission is doing. I think they're in their wisdom through their discussions. They will be able to properly ventilate the matter. And when they arrive at a decision, that will be communicated.
Can you say how the commissioners were informed? Was it in writing by word,
This
mouth?
commission meets regularly, almost every day as the need arises. The day there was meetings, it was discussed at the level of the meeting. Again, I cannot say I said the commissioners were aware, maybe through one of their discussions at the meeting, but as it relates to whether it was a decision of the commission, as I would have indicated, I do not know as to whether it was a decision. But I believe that as a chair of a commission, there is an amount of authority that a chair has to act within her purview. And as again, I do not want to speak on behalf of the chair, but I'm sure there is some wisdom as to why she may have written to the commission.
Are you aware of the possibilities being discussed by the commission in terms of how to deal with this matter?
I am not. The commission should have commenced a commission meeting at 1:30 today. It's likely that this issue is on the agenda for discussion, and if there is a likely discussion or any progress on their deliberations that could be communicated, I can provide that update.
In relation to the unstamped ballots, while the certificate of tabulation just give you the option to vote rejected ballots, any way along the process, does GECOM take any notes to say how many was for unstamped or unmarked or whatever?
I'm sure that on possibly some of the observation reports, we would find that kind of information, but for the purpose of the SOR and in the counting, it is categorized as rejected ballots.
Ms. Ward, could you say how many death certificates would have been provided for, the commission from the coalition?
I can't say specifically number. I know some would have been provided by way of attachment to observation reports directly to the commission. I am not aware of certificates being submitted, but I know there were instances of a few being attached as directed by the commission to observation reports for a specific SOR.
Is there a continuous process of accepting information from the party, that particular party?
I don't understand what you mean by a continuous process.
There was a list given. Were there any other lists? Were the certificates given at the same time with the list, or?
No. I think parties in general, once there are concerns, they would do so by way of letters, and so particularly as it relates to specific issues as the need arise. In this particular case, I am not aware of a letter with an attachment of that nature being submitted.
Does the commission have a position on whether or not it can accept evidence? Has highlighted by some of the political parties, one of them seeking an audience on this particular issue. Does it have a position on whether or not, and I use the word evidence loosely, let me rephrase it.
At this point in time, I do not know. I am not a legal person. The commission has quite at least 4 persons a part of the commission that are legal minds, and I'm sure that as they go through their discussions, they will be guided accordingly.
Do you know, sorry, no, I was a different question.
No, I just wanted to know if there was independent advice, legal advice, apart from...
I'm not aware of.
These are missing poll books. Do you have a number of poll books that have not been accounted for in this process so far?
No, but I'm sure that it's something that I could be able to provide at a later time.
Have there been more than 10 books that have not been accounted for?
Possibly, but because I know there were some instances where poll books were missing across the regions. But to provide you with that figure, I'll have to do some research on that particular aspect.
And final question is related to rejected ballots. Do you have the cost for to produce a single ballot and the contract for the printing of the ballots?
I do not have a cost for producing a single ballot. I'm sure at some point along the way it could be derived based on the total costs in terms of the overall printing, which I also do not have. But because apart from the printing aspect, you have to factor in the transporting and all the other factors that go with it. And of course, because ballots are not printed in Guyana, it comes at a very hefty sum. So it is something that I can look at. But I think I know where your specific question is going as it relates to rejected and spoiled and all of that. And I think this is no unusual case for any election in terms of having those categories of ballots. You have to cater for those categories. The law speaks to those categories of ballots. And so, of course, you will have at any election those categories. But I think what might be interesting is to look across to see a comparison, which we have not done.
What is the budget for the recount? What is the secretariat's budget for the recount?
I do not have a budget figure on this recount aspect, but what I can say to you, it's not a case where we sourced additional funding for it. It is funds that we have at our disposal that we would have used for this exercise.
Was it the $8 billion that was allocated?
Likely that it's part of that
Could
exercise.
you clarify with the secretariat how much they've spent so far for the recount as one of your...
I can clarify,
I'd really appreciate it.
certainly.
Yolanda, getting back to that list that was sent to the Commissioner of Police, what method was used to verify that the list sent or the persons who were even returned, right, as not being in the country, was used to verify that they actually
What I indicated, and I will repeat that, it's a letter that was received from a party. What the chair did was to attach a copy of that document and send off to the commissioner.
and on that
The
list-
methodology used by the immigration department is something that we're not aware of, but we would have received a response to that effect.
okay, and on that list from the
I am not sure too. I think that question may have to be directed to the party to determine whether in their observation or driven by their agents, the submission as it relates to tick names.
Do you know if the commission is discussing the condensed observation reports for the regions already certified?
At this point, no.
They're not discussing it, or you don't?
At this point, no. They're not discussing that matter.
Ms. Ward, Regulation 40 of the National Registration Act allows for GECOM to access immigration records.
That's correct.
My question is there a specified period in which those records are expected to be accessed?
I do not know of a specified period as it relates to accessing the records. Particularly during a I know for us at GECOM, it gives that kind of leverage for us to engage with the Chief Immigration Officer on the Regulation 40, as you said, just as we engage with the General Registrar's Office. As you know, that we would receive a monthly report from the General Registrar's Office, but in the case of the Immigration Department, the frequency at which we would have, or if we have in the past done so, is not something that I'm aware of.
In addition to that, we know there was the issue of the mix-up in the FOLEs at Diamond and that the POs were called in. I couldn't say what...
I know, I think a report was prepared on that matter for submission to the Commission. I'm not sure if it has been submitted to the Commission as yet, and what is the likely decision on that matter.
But could you at least give us an understanding of what was the explanations offered to you?
I do not have the details on that. I know at least one PO would have met with the CEO and would have provided some details, but the basis of those discussions, I do not have that
You say
information.
how many cases there were in which the OLEs were mixed up in, or were in different boxes?
I'm just aware of that one case. I'm aware of that one case.
Based on the amended order, can you say if it is your understanding that GECOM has to make a declaration of the system?
I am not a legal mind. I think the order of itself, the order speaks for itself. It speaks to the Commission's directions to the Chief Election Officer, and it speaks to a time period for receiving any report from the Chief Election Officer. What I did not see specified, based on my understanding, is a timeline at which any kind of announcement from the Commission will be provided. I think the order is self-explanatory in that context.
Aside from that, can you say whether Mr. Clement is still the employee of GECOM?
That's correct, yes.
And when last did he report it to?
Well, he is not here at the recount aspect. Mr. Mingo is the registration officer to one of our Region 5 offices. So as it relates to the reporting aspect at his office, I will not be able to say. He's not here as part of the recount exercise. But and as you know that we have at our respective offices been complying with the COVID-19 guidelines too. And so the frequency at which staff report at those outlying areas and regions, I will not be able to say the frequency at which they do.
Since his declarations on March 5th and 13th, has GECOM contacted him for any explanation in terms of the allegations made?
I am not aware of the Commission of itself moving in that direction.
Ms. Ward, reference the APN again, apart from the list that was sent to immigration for those names, are there any other names or votes that you're calling into question officially at the level of the Commission? And what are those names?
I'm aware that some correspondence was sent to the chair last week from the party on pointing out some irregularities, other issues. I do not think, particularly for those letters, any attachments were provided to them. But I know that there were some issues outlined in some of those correspondence but as it relates to any list, the list that was forwarded to the Commission of Police is the only list that I'm aware of as of this point.
Can you say if Mr. Lowenfield is sick and off the job, or is he?
Mr. Lowenfield is at work.
Yolanda, can you say if GECOM will be publishing the official district tabulation certificates online?
Going to the order as gazetted on the 4th of May, you would have seen that the order speaks to a one tabulation and a report. And so I would await the guidance of the Commission in that regard as to while we are doing a certification regionally, the order speaks to a one tabulation. And so I think being guided by the order, that is the direction in which we'll go until otherwise advised by the Commission.
Also, can you say if the GECOM chair is planning on meeting with the media at any point?
Well, we've been trying to work through an engagement at the level of the Commission, but the frequency at which the Commission meets and have discussions, I do not think at this point they will be ready for that engagement. But of course, I'm sure before this exercise concludes, it would be prudent for the Commission to meet with the press to provide some details as it relates to the entire exercise, their own observations, and to provide you with some guidance and the nation as a whole as to the next steps moving forward. Thank you very much.